Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Humanity Rising. Jim Garrison has been called away for an important meeting in DC for the disclosure UAP work that he is doing there. My name is Dehanna Rice, and I've been honored the last 4 days to bring you urgent self-care for urgent times. I've been moderating. So honored to be with this group again. What I'd like to do before I introduce the presenter today is a little recap of some of the practices that I have been sharing pre-session this week. And we're going to do a little bit again for urgent care. I've been hearing so much in the after chat, what's going on. We've done a little practice there as well and what's been effective. So I want to continue with that vein and for the ending of this week. So you have something to take home with you that you can actually work into that self-soothing practice. It's so important at this time to work on inner peace because all peace starts with ourselves, right? So this is practices that that have been developed through the breath body mind workshops that we do, that I'm a part of the community, and also some of the energy work that I do. I am a polarity therapist, which is an westernized Ayurvedic medical model. So I work with the 5 elements. And I'm also a yoga teacher for many years, 27 years in the private sector. So I want to give you some really good, really constant practice that you can rely on for self-soothing. So I invite you to just unbusy your hands. We're going to start with a little bit of movement. Then we're going to go into a breath work practice and a little meditation. And then I'll end with a little sound healing with tuning forks. So I invite you to put your feet flat on the floor. We're going to do a little bit of movement with our shoulders to start because we hold the whole world on our shoulders, right? So let's start with just breathing in as our shoulders roll forward and up. And slowly breathe out as your shoulders roll back and down. Breathing into the shoulders as they roll up and breathing out as your shoulders roll back. One more time, really breathing in into the shoulders and rotating back as you breathe out. And let's reverse directions. Let's now rotate back and up, breathing in and breathing out, forward and down. Again, breathing in as your shoulders come up and back. And breathing out as they come forward and down. One more time. Breathing in, they're coming up and back. And breathing out, forward and down. Now let's do some reverse psychology for our shoulders. Let's bring them up, breathing in and hold to the ears. Holding, putting stress to reduce stress. Hold, and drop. Letting your head relax. You can move your jaw a little bit. We're going to do some figure 8s. Let's do that one more time. Breathing in as you hold the shoulders up to the ears. Hold, and release. Taking a nice deep breath in. And let's open our jaw and relax it with the sound. Ha. Beautiful. One more deep breath in. And drop that jaw. Ah. Let's do some figure 8s with our head, thinking that our nose is like a pencil drawing an infinity symbol on a horizontal. Let's get some of that movement for our back of our neck into that occiput area. The brainstem's getting some energy. Doing that infinity. Getting the cerebral spinal fluid moving in. That's liquid light, the ancients used to call it. So we're just getting a little bit of that energy moving into the head. We know our world is filled with fear and reptilian brain activity. So we want to get that released. Beautiful. And let's do a little bit of cupping our hands. And we're just going to cover our ears gently and rotate the hands back slowly in circles, almost like a shell on a beach. You can hear rotating back, really relaxing the sides of your head, all the activity that's going on when we're online. Nice and gentle, moving that energy. Wonderful. You want to do that about 10 times. And relax your hands. And I want you to pull your ears a little bit. This is your temporal bones in your head. We're indicating to open them up. If there's any compression, this is a way to open up the head a little bit. Our cranial sutures get bogged up next to each other. And this is just a message. Let's open up. Beautiful. And let's pull the ear lobes. There's all these acupuncture points in our ears. We definitely want to be able to make relationship to our ears. Wonderful. Take a nice deep breath in as you release your hands. And make a sound. Ha. I invite you to lower your eyes if you feel comfortable and see any changes in your mind. Feel any changes in the head and shoulders, the body. Wonderful. Now we're going to do a little bit more vigorous movement. I did this one of the days. It actually was a study at Mayo Clinic. If you slap your body 2 different places, it releases antioxidants. And we need to release our antioxidants because of inflammation, just pouring always in and rebalancing that. So we're hitting on the tops of our legs, right above the knees and the quadriceps, slapping them. And then we're hitting at C7. This is right if you follow your cervical spine down, it's the protruding spinous process. And we're going to slap that. And then as we slap the tops of our quadriceps, we're going to make a ha sound. So just like you're a kid on a playground, you're 5 years old, nobody's telling you to be quiet. Really let that sound out. This is self-expression. We want to be able to let sound out because it's energy sometimes held in the body, especially anger and rage. We talked about that this week. This is a way to let that out. So let's do that together, starting with below slapping. 1 and up, and make the ha sound, ha. Breathing in as you slap up, ha, 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 ha. Let it go, ha. 2 times, ha, ha. And come into stillness. Much more vigorance with the body. Feel the change if you want to lower your eyes in the body, in the mind, any changes. And let's just do a little brushing off. Let's just brush off our clavicles from the shoulders, doing a little brushing. And this is the triple warmer. We want to relax it, the vigilante of the body. Don't want it overextending. Beautiful. And let's go across the body. We're going to do the opposite hand, opposite shoulder, and squeeze those traps, and then drag your hand across your body to the opposite hip. You're squeezing, dragging, opposite hip, squeezing, dragging, opposite hip. One more time, squeezing, dragging, opposite hip. feeling the change again with that. If you want to lower your eyes. And now let's get prepared to do some breath work. This is coherent breathing. We're going to be guided by the 2-bell track for 5 breaths per minute. And I want to do something called painting the waterfall that we did. So we're listening for the high tone. That's the high tone we're going to be breathing in. And the low tone we're going to be breathing out. Together, watch how I move my hands. Breathing in, your hands come up, raised from the wrist. Your hands come down, leading with the wrist. This is called painting the waterfall. Breathing in, 2, 3, 4. Breathing out, 2, 3, 4. Breathing gently through the nose, 3, 4. Breathing out gently through the nose, 3, 4. Breathing in as if you're on a beach and a wave is washing up you, and breathing out, the wave washes down. Breathing in, the wave is washing up. Breathing out, the wave is washing out. Gently breathing in and breathing out. Now let's change our hand position. Breathing in as your hands come up. Breathing out as your hands along the sides of your body come down. Breathing in, your hands come up. Breathing out, stretch your arms out to the horizons on the sides of your body. Breathing in, your hands come up. Breathing out, your hands come down. Beautiful. One more time. Breathing in. And breathing out. Beautiful. Now, breathe whichever rhythm you would like. And just follow my voice. I want you to imagine the feeling of the space inside your nose. The feeling of the space as you breathe in the air and as you breathe out. Can you imagine the feeling of the space of each circumference of each eyeball as they drop down into your head? Deeper and deeper, relaxing further. Can you imagine the feeling of the space of each exterior ear, the upper ear, the middle ear, the earlobe, the tragus that touches your cheek, the whole ear, and the feeling of that space? Can you imagine the feeling of the space between each ears? The inner part of the ear, the brain tissue, the inner part of the other ear, the whole space inside the head. Can you imagine the feeling of the space from the tip of your chin to the back of your head and all the space that's occupying? Your whole head is floating in space, surrounded by space, penetrated by space. Feeling that. Now, can you imagine the feeling of the space of your thumbs? The lower part connecting to your hand, the thumb knuckle, the thumbnail, the thumb print. The feeling of those thumbs and the space they're occupying. They're surrounded by space. floating in space, feeling all the space from your thumbs to your head, all of the body. At the same time, can you feel all of the circumference of your body, the skin, all of at the same time, and the feeling the space of that, the container of the space of you. Can you feel it dissolve into the space around you, extending out into the room, out into the treetops above the building you're in, out into the cosmos, into infinity. All the light, stars and galaxies. And coming back from infinity into the solar system of our beautiful Mother Gaia at your feet, blue marble, down into the treetops above the building you're in, back into the room, and there's seats you're sitting in. And just be with that for a few seconds, the stillness. And wonderful. So glad I had a little chance to do that. Send you off this week with a little practice, and certainly you can watch on replay. But now I want to introduce an honorable guest. Rachel Epstein is the director of the American Institute for Mental Imagery and a holistic health coach that lives and works on the Upper East Side of Manhattan in New York. And drawing on all the use of mental imagery, dreams, and Western spiritual tradition, she guides her clients to heal from physical, emotional difficulties and trauma. She's also co-authored a book called Reversing the Trauma of War, PTSD help for veterans, active duty personnel, and their families. And she is about to release her newest book, which I really want to talk about. I'm excited. We Are Not Meant to Die, Building a Spiritual Body of Light, who was co-authored with her late husband, Dr. Gerald Epstein. She is also a licensed acupuncturist and a Juris Doctorate from Benjamin Cardozo School of Law. Wow. Welcome, Rachel. Just turn on there you go.
Hi, welcome. Great to be here. It was really relaxing. Great a way for me to start having our discussion talk today.
Great. I know you've been on before, and the audience, some of you may remember Rachel, but my big, gratitude for you is that you and Jerry were some of the most wonderful people to me in your program. I wrote Jerry, and I've loved his work for so many years. So many people know Dr. Jerry Epstein in Manhattan for imagery work. And can you just talk a little bit about his work and what happened with his teacher in Israel, why he came back to the United States? He was a Freudian trained psychiatrist, and it completely changed his methodology for work, and he's written some amazing books on imagery. So why don't we start with Jerry's story a little bit and yours?
So Jerry was from, I think, the earliest of times. He really wanted to be a sports writer, but that wasn't going to be accepted by his family. So his next interest was to go and was the mind. And he went to medical school specifically to become a psychiatrist. It was the only thing he was really interested in was the mind. And he got through medical school, and then he went and became a Freudian trained analyst. And after he had done that for a while, this was like a 9 years training, it wasn't holding his interest anymore. And he went with his former wife to Israel, and she was studying women, important women that I guess their spiritual traditions or had helped during the the Yom Kippur War. That was from 1973. And he was very bored with these talks, but he went and let me backtrack. They went to the Zendo because they were also sitting as Zen practitioners. And he went to the Zendo and he met a young man there who said he had worked with a woman in Israel who had healed him and cured him of a lifelong depression in 5 sessions using a technique called waking dream. My husband scoffed at that and he said, that's not possible. It takes years and years in Freudian therapy. And even then, you're just like a well-adjusted neurotic. You're not cured. So it turns out that he went with his wife and had the opportunity to meet this woman who was an Algerian Jewish woman who had come to Israel in the 50s. And it turned out that he meets her and they start talking, and he realizes it is this woman. And she says to him, he doesn't know anything about imagery. And she says to him, imagine that you are on a train ride. You're going, and she starts talking to him. And all of a sudden, he's recalling his Freudian training. And in Freudian training, the way you do associative thinking while you're on the couch is through imagining, Freud said, that you are on a train. So Jerry reminds her that, oh, yes, he knows something about imagery. It's like associative thinking. And she says, fine. And then she says, and what direction does train go in? And he gets really like, what direction does train go in? And he doesn't, is there a right answer or wrong answer? Some trains go up mountains, some go straight. And all of a sudden he says like this. And she says, and what happens if we change the axis of the train? And at that moment, he later described himself, and the only words he knew was that he became a being of light. He disappeared. And at that moment, he had this epiphany, or that he was no longer a psychiatrist. He was no longer Jerry, the doctor. He didn't have, wasn't husband. He had no identities. He was a being of light. And he, at that moment, said, I will give up everything that I have to study with his teacher. And he stayed, and he went back and forth from Israel to New York studying and with her. And he had an apprenticeship of about 7 years with her. And she unfolded this very ancient imaginal practice that she called the Kabbalah of light. And in this imaginal practice, where there are different levels of how deeply you go into the imaginal realm, but you bring down, the idea is that we're bringing down the supernal light from the invisible realms, and we're using this light to repair ourselves, to repair our world around us, and to make a connection to the divine. So it's the highway of connection between the invisible and the visible.
Beautiful. Wow. I love that story so much. I'm just so enthralled with my experience when I first entered the field of just the energy of imagery in his office on 92nd on the Upper East Side. was it was so powerful. I actually had two clairvoyant experiences, and I'd never had any clairvoyant experience because the field was so powerful. People doing imagery work there, and I was convinced Rupert Sheldrake's model entering morphogenetic fields. I was actually doing that. I'd read about it, but I was actually it was tactile. Jerry was always saying, it's as real as the table in front of you or the chair that you're sitting on.
Exactly. We like to think that there's we have an inner life and an outer life, but this is the material life is more real. And here we're reversing it. What we're discovering is that the material is being birthed from the immaterial. That
Beautiful.
right. So that's what this whole work is about. And I had an insight into the imaginal process recently because I had been talking to a Sufi teacher, and he would talk about how the body and the astral body, our physical body and the astral body, for most people are exactly the same. And that as you do his heart meditation, what happens in spiritual life is that the astral body expands outward and it makes communication. And here also, it occurred to me that that's what happens in the imaginal realm. You're building your astral body up so that you can travel to these other realms. And in ancient wisdoms, it was an ascent. You were ascending, and that's how the Kabbalah at the time of Jesus was understood. It was an ascent upwards to the palaces or to the throne of God.
Beautiful. And it's so poetic and elegant, when you describe it, Rachel. It's just such a enticing place to connect, right?
It's
We
enticing.
It's very enticing. So tell me about what's going on with your work and the evolution of your book, helping soldiers with this. What's going on with the book that you're about to release? I want to know about that.
Okay,
Uh,
so like there's a couple of so the book that I published a couple of years ago in the middle of COVID
right.
was a book that I co-authored with a woman who had worked with vets, with American veterans. And Jerry, by the way, felt very connected to them because he himself had been an American veteran in the Vietnam War, and he was at a receiving hospital where he just saw the tremendous trauma that he witnessed this tremendous trauma, and there was nothing that really could be done. This was, in 1968 or so.
Right.
And it was, disturbing. They had some medications to completely knock you down, but there's no therapies really of any value, although we know that trauma from war has existed under different names, throughout history. And, they used to call it shell shock.
Right.
So she so together we worked on creating this book of very simple imagery exercises to deal with everyday life that veterans or anyone who is suffering from trauma can use. So it has the title of Veterans or Their Families, but it's really a book of, in the simplest way, of stress reduction. How to use imagery in its simplest forms at home safely without anyone else, that you can do by yourself, cost-free at any time. So there were imagery exercises for typical things that were affecting the veterans, and it differed from war to war. So, in the last wars of the 20 years, driving is a major issue for veterans who are coming back from combat because they've been in these big vehicles, armored vehicles, and they're always, driving becomes a very, very tense thing because they're waiting for the next bomb to show up. Same thing with being in a crowded place. They don't like to be in crowded places because you have no safe exit and they're on hyper vigilant alert a lot of the time. A lot of things with anger because they're very, quick to respond. And they need to keep, as I learned, they need to keep their families, on schedule, everything planned out, etc. So they have many, many issues that impact their everyday life, both at the job and at home. So this was an answer. And I recently, I started working with Israeli trauma therapists to train them in imagery. They are very grounded in somatic practices, but have very little interest, knowledge, not interest, in really knowing how they can use the mind to help heal these somatic issues, because they are somatic. They're just automatic.
Right.
That's what I've been doing, and it has been amazing the feedback that I've gotten from one of the therapists about her work, where she's with these soldiers who have been very, very closed up. So we're going to do, I think, one of her favorite exercises today as well, I hope.
Yeah,
And
we can do it now if you want, and then we can continue the conversation. I think everyone's biting at the bit to do a little imagery after what you just described.
that's great. Okay, so everyone, the way I do imagery is we just sit up in a chair and you uncross your legs and your arms. And if you have armrests of a chair, you can put your arms there. And if not, just put them not touching on your thighs, so that and your feet are flat on the ground. And then we're just going to do a couple of relaxing breaths. And if you don't do it exactly the way I say, it's fine, no big deal. And then we're going to do a short imagery, and whatever you get is wonderful. And if anyone has any difficulty, you can let me know in the chat. And after the program, when we have the breakout sessions, we can talk about it. But I don't expect anything to happen. But okay, so everyone sit up and close your eyes. Put your feet on the ground and your hands in your lap or in the armrests. And just start by taking 3 relaxing, slow breaths. And you can start with an exhalation, a long, slow exhalation through the mouth, and a normal inhalation through the nose. And again, a long, slow exhalation through the mouth, and a normal inhalation through the nose. And then another long, slow exhalation. And now imagine that you're opening your chest and you're gently taking out your heart. How does it look? Shape, its color. And now clean off or remove anything in or on the heart that needs to be cleansed away. And then see what comes out of your heart. And use what emerges to renew your heart and feel contented. And now gently put your heart back in your chest and seal your chest up. And when you're ready, breathe out and open your eyes.
Beautiful. I always see silver stars, like when you said what's in your heart, they just like poured out of my heart, these silver, very defined 5-pointed stars.
That's beautiful.
Thank you so much.
Write in the chat what the
Yeah.
experience did. Be wonderful.
Yeah, we're going to do an after chat after the program with Rachel, so you'll be able to, talk to her a little bit more about some of the responses here in the actual presentation. Somebody had white flowers and doves.
Oh, that's beautiful.
I like it. Beautiful. There's so many, exercises in Jerry's books and Colette's book, his teacher, and your book. Now, this is such a lovely, we are so inundated with war right now. It's so important to get some support for our veterans and their families. I love the name of your book. It's so potent to get right to the crux of it. Let's talk a little bit about the imagery process a little bit more. For me, I was always so fascinated about what is the no time zone. Can you
Yeah,
talk a little bit about that?
sure. So when you go into imagery, you're going into a no time, no space zone. So what does that mean? It sounds rather abstract. I mean, we're still sitting in a body here. But what it means is that the imaginal realm is by definition, it has no time and no space. There's no space because images are, has no time because images just happen very, very quickly. And that's why in this imaginal process, we go quickly, much more quickly than other relaxation imaginal processes that you might be more familiar with. And secondly, and it has no space because images don't take up any space. They have a form, so they have dimension, but they don't really have space. And they're coming and going. So what we're doing when we go into this not no time, no zone space is we're in the imaginal realm. And at the same time, you can also think about the no time, no space zone as being a place where we're entering the sacred, right? Because the sacred is out of normal time and normal space. So we're entering the sacred dimension. And of course, we can enter it by many means. You can do it by meditation, by imaginal journeys, by taking entheogens, by drumming. There are many, many ways, but this is a particular path which anyone can do, and you become better at it as you do it. And it's also a place that's sacred time and space because it's a quiet space generally. It's away from the everyday world, and you're turning your senses inward when you do imaginal practices. You're turning yourself away for a bit from the outside, everyday, habitual world to go into a non-habitual space. Now, so it allows us access to the sacred. And in this, this thing about the sacred is that we're making the shift from quantity to quality, because that's really a major issue in spiritual life and in healing ourselves. The quantity is the material. It's what we do in the everyday world, right? The quality is what's inscribed in ourselves and in our relationships and love and the things that can't be counted by money, for example, that can't be acquired with things in the material realm. So in sacred peoples always are entering sacred spaces as well as sacred time. Sacred spaces are easy to understand. You know, in Judaism, there was a temple, you go to a church. The burning bush in the Bible is a sacred space. Jacob's journeying when he imagines, he has a dream of the access point between heaven and earth. It's a ladder, and that's a sacred space. The people, the Kohi people, are always entering sacred space as well. In fact, they train their children from very young to be in sacred space from 7 months to 9 years. The priests and the shamans of that community, and they're remaining in silence and in darkness. Right? They're going back to the sacred womb for a very long period of time so that they can learn how to be deeply connected. They're also okay. So now, but let's talk about sacred time. So, what's sacred time? So, sacred time is we make time sacred by staying in the moment. That's the simplest way to think about it. Uh, time, the way we construct it in the world of quantity, in our everyday thinking, is the world of cause and effect. That's when time takes place. And time is related to cause and effect thinking. When we get out of a cause and effect thinking, we come into a new type of thinking called analogic thinking, where we're seeing relationships. So we're seeing the relationships between what's happening inside ourselves and what's happening outside. We see all of the stress and trauma and anger and resentment that we have, or feelings of lack inside, and it's reflected in our outside world, right? So the inside and the outside are reflecting each other, and we're learning how to see that much more clearly rather than to see in linear time. The last thing I want to say about that is that in order to reestablish, to live out of time, we not only need in our day-to-day life to learn how to live with the moment in front of us and stop thinking in if-then thinking about what's going to happen in the future, but stay put right now, and stop thinking about what happened in the past and stay put right now. And also to start developing a rhythmic life. Because when you're in sacred time, you're in a rhythmic life. You're not in the arrhythmia that we all suffer from. So it's no surprise that we all die of heart diseases of any sort because our heart is out of rhythm. And the way to develop rhythm is to follow in the West, is to follow some sort of regular Sabbath practice. And in whatever way you conceive of it, that was the way that the ancient Hebrews understood recreating sacred time. So we do that through holiday practice and through a weekly practice where we reverse what we've been doing. 6 days we live in this sort of normal work of toil and, work and taking care of things. And then we have 1 day of rest where we turn inward and we can connect to the sacred realms. So that's my, okay. Does that all make sense, or what would you like to add to that?
Well, I love the rhythm part of life, and that a practice that's been my impetus in my work for decades is to develop the practice, have a spiritual practice or whatever you want to name it, even if you're not spiritually oriented, just for health benefits, getting yourself in the moment and getting that, it's like children, they need routine. Right? We all know that children need a routine, and when they get off their routine, they don't feel as strong and capable. And I think that's so important to get the rhythms in life in a way that's beneficial.
I think you even do it more than that, because you teach people breathing, and what you're teaching them, the inhalation and the exhalation, is the way that we can establish rhythm moment to moment. And that's really been, I think, a major part of your work, as I understand it.
Yeah, absolutely. I've been blessed with the I mean, everybody breathes, right? That's an in, for your practice. I mean, you have to breathe every day. It's the rhythm that you can voluntarily change and then, change your physiology. So I really want to talk a little bit about the new book.
Okay.
And what's going on with all that information. I know Jerry passed in 19.
He passed 5 years ago. We just passed his passage date.
Oh, and I feel him. I want you to know when I invoke, any information about him, I feel his presence around me. He is such a jokester. I mean, he and I always had such a great time together. And I was different than some of the other people in class because most of them were psychiatrists and psychologists. And I came in as this energy worker.
Oh, right.
But let's talk.
So I'm glad he's visiting you. He visited me the other day and gave me a beautiful dream of us moving into a new house together in Israel, but it was in America, and it was totally peaceful. The house was peaceful, and everybody around us were peaceful. There were playing children and playing adults. It's a beautiful dream.
Oh, so, I love it.
I think he's very happy I'm finally getting this book out, and this book is called "We're Not Meant to Die," which of course is a shock to everybody. What do you mean we're not meant to die? Everybody dies. But from the book's main thesis, if I had to say the most important thing we can take away from it is that what wears us out, so we die much sooner than we might die, or we might make ascension to heaven, is getting into these chronic emergency states. So at the beginning of this session, you worked on getting us out on a physical level through sound, through motion, right? So this book is a book that's teaching us how to get out of it through using the mind as the basis of getting out of this emergency state, because we're all in false emergencies, and the false emergencies come in, I think, as I've understood it, in 2 ways, or 3 ways. From trauma, it comes from thinking that now is then, that what's happening now is what happened then. It's sort of a cause and effect that gets short-circuited in the system, so that we keep responding in a habitual way when there's no emergency. That's what trauma is. They're in an emergency state. wherever they are, whether they're frozen or whether they're in a hypervigilant state. That's what's happening. The other type of emergencies, which is what we have deal with mostly in our day-to-day life, is worrying about the future. What's going to happen? If this happens, then that's going to happen. And we live our life in an imaginal realm, but it's not an imaginal realm connected to God. It's an imaginal realm of our own fantasy makings about what's going to happen. We don't know what's going to happen. It's an open system, right? It's like the spiral that you spoke about with ears. It's an open system. And every time we make we're making a false image, like an idol, when we assume what's going to happen in the future. And of course, we draw on, in our cause and effect logical thinking, that it's from the past. And we draw on habits that we have established in the past and apply them to our current situation, which is then going to live out in another future situation. And we live in as if we're always living in these false emergency states. And every time it comes down to every time we don't experience life as we believe it ought to be, it's a little bit major, like a little emergency sets in us, and we're not really aware of it. And so we want to become aware of it. And he also has, in this book, we have a whole section on metaphysics. We have another section on the 5 dimensions of our being. That is, that we are mental, emotional, physical, social, and spiritual beings, and how they all work together and how it brings about health or dishealth, right? Or ill health. And then there's another section of life-giving practices. And he has about 10 life-giving practices that include using the 10 commandments or the 10 laws of balance, which is what he called them, to remember ourselves in a new way, to put ourselves together in a new way, because the word remember means to put members, pieces of ourselves, back together. Because we start out as whole beings and we very soon become fragmented. And now we're coming back into wholeness. And when we come back into wholeness, we come back into health, holism, wholesomeness, and holiness, because they're all related words in the English etymology.
Beautiful. Yeah, absolutely. Is there something that you can share from the book with the audience about the wholeness and coming back into that?
Sure. So imagery is a way that we come back into wholeness, because we're repairing our disemergency states. When you do imagery, you're planting a new seed of possibility for yourself, usually. So, for example, let's say you are physically ill and you need to get your blood sugars, stabilized. So you can go into the imaginal realm, go into your imagination, turn your senses inward, make a connection between your mind and body, and go into the center of the mind, into your brain, and reset the blood sugar levels. Very simple, but it's been very helpful to people who have blood sugar levels. That's one example. And I'm trying to think what else I could tell you about
there's so many exercises like that where you just go and make a relationship to take charge of your system, investigate what's inside. I love the Egyptian healing exercise I've used, with clients, prolific. I mean, I had a dancer, I'll tell a quick story, that had a neurological problem in New York because her partner dropped her and he dropped her on her head. And so she was going to neurologists and all kinds of different people. And I did that Egyptian healing exercise with her. And she's went into the brain and looked at her neurons, they were slow. They weren't firing the right way. And just by recognizing that, then her neurons started actively moving in the right rhythm, like you were just talking about, a rhythm. And she came out of the exercise and she was like amazed that she had that much information that she discovered. The imagery exercises are about discovering so much about yourself, wouldn't you say, Rachel?
I would say even if so, there are different types of imageries. You can do. Most of us are very familiar with scripted imageries, but even there, you're making where somebody feeds you, as I did, an image, but you're making the discovery about what's in your heart, and everybody's heart is going to contain a different piece of information that's going to be reflected back from your inner states, from, you can call it your subconscious or your unconscious or your, you know, out of bounds consciousness, whatever you want to speak about it, but it's going to come up into consciousness now. And now you can, knowing that, you're preparing it.
Right.
You said, so what we do in imaginal work when you're working with people is that you often look not only for the physical, to repair the physical, but you're now looking to repair the emotional and social relationships that people have. So I don't know what else you did with the dancer, but one thing that might have, she didn't need it, but she could go back also and even repair the memory of being dropped.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Right? Because she wants to get rid of that's lodged in her body too. She had a shock at that moment. Or she could repair her relationship with the dancer if she was feeling like he screwed her up.
Unsafe. Yeah.
Unsafe, right. So there are all ways for us to engage in a holistic way in mind, body, and also in our social realms, and of course, spiritual.
And so do you think that the timeline of our lives can actually, you can go in, choose what's been traumatic to you, and then reverse your relationship to it through the
Absolutely.
imagery? And it's so, powerful for the thing is, would you agree that we live in a mental construct universe?
Absolutely.
I asked
That's what
Jerry this.
spiritual life is about, is getting out of your own mental construct.
Yeah, right.
So what
I
did Jerry
asked
say?
I asked Jerry once a question. It was a Joseph Chilton Pierce quote about is man living in a universe that's reflecting a mirror of man's mind? And he said, I agree with that. We're living in a universe of reflecting man's mind, but it's from God's mind.
Oh, it's beautiful, right? Because we're made in the image and likeness of God, and we have sullied some of that. So we're becoming only looking at our own image, and here we're connecting back to our original image, and we're
Right.
describing that.
Yeah, somebody just mentioned the vertical, what was that train? What happened with which direction was the train going? And
Right.
I'm always talking about turn the train, vertical, and it's going up. What does that do to your head? I've done that with so many clients.
You mean you took in that exercise and you made it into your own exercise?
Yeah, I did. I did actually, and he was a very popular. He'd done a lot of work in New York City, and I was just he had anxiety, and I was trying to get him to recognize the train of anxiety moving horizontal, and then I was like, now if you just pivot it, what happens if the train goes up? Because he was agnostic, and so he wasn't into the same, so I tried to get him to just do the vertical axis in his mental constructs and what that breaks through. And I always tease my students, you may not believe in God, but spiritual enlightenment is a side effect of this work.
That's terrific.
So, yeah, I'd love to know any more exercises you could share with the new book.
So the new book has the new book has tons of imagery exercises in it about ascension, about like putting yourself back together and ascending and resurrection, etc.
Yeah,
So
we need this.
I don't know whether you'd like to do, I got to think about what you could do. I have some on time. I have some on, uh, we didn't discuss this. I got to look them up now.
No,
But
that's okay. We can stick with what we talked about and other exercises. Just
well, you know what? I don't know that this one is in it, but the other one that we discussed
yeah.
was very beautiful. Oh, you know what I wanted? Let's share two things. One, neither
Okay.
of them are from the book, but it's fine. The first of all is a very simple imagery for trauma and for
Okay.
when you're having anxiety or fear, which is just to we can either do the whole. You want me to just say it or do the whole exercise?
Yeah, I'd like to do the whole exercise. This week, we've been doing a lot of work with rage and fear, the whole collective community, and let's relieve some of that with these self-help, urgent care things.
Okay. All right. This one's called The Pillow of Light. And I heard it from a colleague of Jerry's. So everyone close your eyes and sit up and breathe out slowly. These long, slow exhalations through the mouth and normal inhalations through the nose, creating a natural, relaxed rhythm as you turn your senses inward. And now imagine that you're standing in a beautiful field and the sun is bright overhead and the sky is blue. And now sense your arms growing very, very long so they reach the sun. And now take a piece of the sun in your hands and mix it with some blue sky and place it over your solar plexus. That's the stomach area. And just feel the warmth of the sun spreading all over you, relaxing you and calming you and protecting you. And when ready, breathe out and open your eyes, knowing that you're protected.
Beautiful. Wow. That
So,
brings me parasympathetic, definitely.
and you can even use a physical pillow if you don't want to imagine. You don't, if you're very frightened, just put a pillow over your solar plexus area, over your stomach area. And it brings a sense of protection and calms the nervous system down.
Mm, beautiful. I love that. You want to continue and do another?
I'm gonna do one more with you, unless we have more time.
Yeah, let's keep going. We've
Okay.
got another half hour.
Oh wow, we've got lots. I can I can find another imagery from the book too. Okay, so
Okay.
this one is called To Bring Light into the World. So close your eyes again and sit up tall and breathe out 3 times slowly. This time counting down from 3 to 1, seeing the one tall, clear, and bright in front of you. And breathe out and imagine you're standing inside your inner garden. And take a look around, feeling the earth beneath your feet, the air against your skin, and the light of the brightest star shining down through the dusk. and walk into the center of your garden to the oldest and most beautiful tree standing under the light of the star. A white marble translucent staircase is ascending from the roots of the tree towards the star. And now climb up this staircase until you arrive at the star. Sit in its rays and gather its twinkle and gather its beauty into your arms. And filled with the star's beautiful light, send this light from your heart to someone you love. And with the star's light, fashion a cloak and wrap yourself in it. And cloaked in light, descend the steps, sensing and feeling that this light, like raindrops, is nourishing your garden and your family, your community, and the earth itself. And now reaching the ground, feel your feet reconnect with the earth. You're now a beautiful, calm light. And breathe out and open your eyes.
Was that from the book, the new book?
That's not from the new book. I think this is an imagery exercise from Colette, from Jerry.
Oh, that's beautiful. Wow. I love the cloak part of it. And then the levels of how the light extends to the self, family, community, world. You know, it's so quantum. Don't you feel, the possibilities working in this realm of,
Absolutely. This is a holographic system,
mhm.
right? Make one change. So how does that work? That means if you do an imagery exercise for one thing, it can have a spillover effect in many, many areas. And when you change your inside light, you're changing and bringing this light down and reflecting it out. You are changing your vibration, right? You did all that vibrational work at the beginning of the session, right? You're changing your vibration and you're allowing other people's vibrations to now sink in with yours. So even though it doesn't have, and lastly, imagery compels you to go out and do things differently in the world, either on an individual basis or whatever it is that you want to achieve. So it really is holographic.
Mm-hmm. Can you talk a little bit about that, how it changes your frame of reference in your life's journey and trajectory? And that's something fascinating.
Well, look at Jerry. He had this meeting with this woman who completely turned his life upside down. And the
Mm-hmm.
work is about turning your life upside down. So I know you had a tarot speaker on yesterday,
Uh-huh.
and you know the 12th, I think it's the 12th arcana,
The
is,
high arcana?
yeah, is the hanged man, right? The
Right.
hanged man is now, he's upside down. He's not
Mhm.
hung by his head. Instead, he's alive and he's hung by his foot. So he's being drawn down. What he's doing there is that he's overcome what we call terrestrial gravity. He's not being drawn down, but he's reversed and he's now being drawn up by celestial gravity. That's what's holding him up. He's becoming enlightened. He's lightening up, not drawn down by gravity, which is what ultimately is also on many levels, you know, does us in, right? And the word grave and acting in a grave manner also brings us down. So part of this work is that we are enlightening ourselves. We're lightening up, filled with light, and we're also not taking everything so seriously and calamitously, because that is what wears us out and puts us into this emergency state all the time. So if you don't, how do we not, we don't make everything important. It's a fundamental, uh, truth in the Western spiritual life. You don't make everything important. You step back and you reverse your habit of glomming into the event and emotionally engaging in it with a way that is going to bring your energy down. Right? We spoke a little bit before about one of the participants who is very, very optimistic, but life is getting her down reading all this news. So one of the things you want to do is imaginally is protect yourself from all these vibrations that you're finding. And you can do that in imagery, and it will have an effect on your outside world. It will change your physiology. It will
Mhm.
change your emotional life. It will change your relationships to other people. And you'll make a change in the world.
Yeah, that happened to me in class with Jerry, like midpoint in the year that I studied with him. I remember I had an image that was something in relationships to some trauma from my childhood, and I wept. But as I wept, my nose started bleeding just out of the blue as I was explaining my imagery, and I was like, it's actually changing my physiology. I was bleeding I mean, it was so physical. So I know that, Rachel, that it really can go in and shift all kinds of, reality checks, kind of like the isness of the universe. Our social brains has become much more popular. Jerry was the first person that introduced me more to instead of mind, body, spirit, it was mind, body, spirit, social.
Right.
And how we are in a social relationship. Daniel Siegel talks about the social brain much more, but it's become more popular. Jerry was talking about it, 20 years ago.
Because all illness comes out of our social relationships. It's not just I inherited genetically. Now we understand, we have a language to say, oh, it's epigenetic, it's
Right.
the environment. And it's not just our physical environment, which is this concern we have about exercising and vitamins and our nutrition, which I absolutely support. But the one thing we put very little focus on is our emotional social engagements and
Yeah.
how we can change them ourselves by remembering and reflecting that connection between God and ourselves, right? Between the invisible realm and ourselves. And when we reconnect to that, we will heal the planet. What's happened in the West is that they threw out, first of all, they became interested in the end of days instead of being here now. And this work, even though, so you asked, why do we want to stay here? We want to stay here because this is a great place to repair relationships and repair ourselves and reverse ourselves. So we want to stay in life and choose life for as long as that's possible.
Right.
Uh,
Absolutely.
so a major process, a major focus of this work is to always choose, because what happens is at any moment we are given a choice between life and death. We can take a death path or we can take a life path. And what's laid out in the book is how to choose a life path, how to choose life. And we haven't always been given this education of how to choose life moment to moment, how to keep that feeling of connection, what to do, because being angry, even if it's righteous indignation, eventually wears the system out,
Hmm. Yeah,
right? We want
absolutely.
to choose life, and choosing life is also choosing love. A path of love is in a way that we can be lived out and live in community. So at any moment, God says in Genesis, I set before you life and death, good and bad, choose. So
Hmm.
it is our choice. And prior to, at the after Noah, after, God in traditional, the Bible says God brought upon the destruction of the earth. He wiped out everybody. And then afterwards, Noah came, Noah is saved and he sees a rainbow, and that rainbow is the connection between us and God, and it's the rainbow of hope. And at that point, God said, I'm out of here about the world's destruction. I'm leaving it to you, to humanity, to choose life or choose not. So we are at this turning point where we need to choose life, because everything that we do is often choosing death.
So true. Yep.
So this,
I love that. And it's so important right now, get in the mindset of choosing life. Is there an exercise you can share for that?
I got to think a moment, but I'm sure I'll come up with something.
Well, the rainbow,
I think I found this to be very powerful. These two other imageries, they're very short. One I used during my pregnancy, and it's very simple. All you do is when you're feeling distressed, again, you imagine that you're opening up a blue sky umbrella. And so everyone just imagine, even if you, without doing all the breathing, wherever you are, whenever you're stressed, is just open up this blue sky umbrella that covers the entire sky and protects you, your family, the community, etc.
Beautiful. Yeah, I love that.
The other one is to, when you're feeling hopeless, hope is extremely important. And at the movie that you told me to watch, the Aluna by the Cohi, at the end, the British BBC person says that he thought he was documenting, what they wanted to say, but in fact, he was the one who was changed, because at the end, this people who have been saving the earth, saving their ecosystem, preserving earth, honoring Mother Nature, making repairs in their ritual way or in an imaginal realm. They're making repairs. At the end, they bring him hope. So when you're feeling hopeless or you're feeling depressed, swallow a rainbow. Just imagine that. And if you don't want to swallow it, just see the rainbow's colors going through you.
Beautiful. I recently did that. I had remembered that exercise. I was taking a walk here in California, and it was after a rainstorm moved out. And in the horizon, I saw this beautiful rainbow. And I'm like, the rainbow exercise. So I went home and I did that. And when I swallowed the rainbow, as I swallowed all the colors, it moved back through my head and came out the back of my head. And all of a sudden, I was hanging like an ornament on a tree, like the tree of life. I looked up and I'm like, oh, that's the tree of life. But it was something in my head that needed to relax, like the rainbow moved through me and lifted me up.
Right, because you have all this inner knowledge of what you need and how to heal moment to moment. So humanity has all of the knowledge to heal the planet.
Yeah, I agree. That's Buckminster Fuller, right?
Right. And of course, I'm looking at Ubiquity University, and what did they choose? They chose a rainbow,
Yeah.
right? Because we all know what a rainbow means to us.
Mm, I love that. And can you talk a little bit? This was something that I was so moved by with Jerry's work, is the isness of things.
Right. So every day you remember we're talking about past and the future, and where we want to be is right here in this moment now. So in this moment now, it's what we face is what is, not what ought to be. So we always want to stay with the isness and not live with the ought to be, because when we're living with this other like fantasy about what ought to be, we can't be in this moment and deal with the moment at hand. Instead, we're living out the other world. It ought to be. And it leads to resentment and to inactivity and judgment about this moment. And we want to come into this moment freely without any preconceived notions about what has to happen or what happened. right? We want to live in out of it back into that no time zone of just living and facing what's in front of our face without adding all the stories, because the emergency state is an addition of stories about what's going to happen, right? And we want to get out of the future and out of the past and come right back to what it is we're without adding any additional information. So if you're at a stoplight, right? We all, we need rules to regulate ourselves in a society. You're at the stoplight. We don't want to add in, oh, I'm going to be late to the meeting, or, oh, that stupid person didn't move fast enough through the next car, so I'm stuck here, right? They're going too slowly and I'm now stuck waiting. And this is a waste of time. We want to stay in the moment as it is and face it and deal with it and notice all those judgments that are coming up and clean them out. And you can clean them out with imagery. You can do a stopping exercise. You can do a reversing. You can just as easily imagine in the moment the opposite of being upset about the stoplight. So you're planting a new image at the moment now in this time and space, but it's just in this moment. So it's really out of time, out of space to come back to this moment. I don't know if that was clear, but
yeah, it's all about staying present. And somebody's asking when your book will come out.
Hoping April 26th.
That is her daughter's birthday.
Right. And if not, it'll be May. I'm realistic. The index may take a little longer than I thought.
But we've been waiting for it for like 5 years, I think.
We did. I finished it with Jerry before he passed away.
Yeah.
But I guess I needed the time to get it inscribed in me.
Sure. I mean, it takes so much information to put. I mean, his Encyclopedia of Imagery, the Colette collection, that is an extraordinary book. It has this waxy cover. I do imagery practices 21 days, and then I go 7 days off, and then I start over again. And now, because of so many years doing imagery, my imagery exercises, I just record on my phone. And then I go through them. But after like a couple of the days, it's so ingrained, I don't even need the recording anymore. Because like Rachel had mentioned, everyone, it happens quickly. Imagery is very quick because our mind is working on that level. As a practitioner of energy, our mind has a very quick energy. It's like a multitasking. We're always thinking. So imagery, it makes so much sense that it can happen that quick.
It happens really quick. And at the same time, in this work, we go and we do it over and again over a course of 21 days so we can inscribe it into ourselves. Because sometimes, you do something and then you forget. So here's a way of remembering ourselves in a constant way. And by engaging in this imagery practice, which takes, I don't know, a couple of minutes in the morning each day, maybe a couple of minutes at night, depending on how you want to inscribe your rhythm of imagery, you make profound changes. And Jerry used to speak about this as you're doing most medicine is often a macro input for micro output, right? We put you have chemotherapy, it's a macro input of chemicals into you and a micro input of a micro output of often of healing for a lot of cancers, not all of them. Some of them, they've been very, not dissing modern medicine, but it has a macro impact on the body and often a micro length of days that you've been extended. So imagery is exactly the opposite. You're putting in a minute amount of information into the system to get a macro output. It's like he used to compare it to to fireworks. One match, one image can ignite a whole change in the system and reorganize the system being ourselves, and make a whole big light up in ourselves, right? We can really enlighten ourselves also.
Love
So we
that
always want to
metaphor.
do strategies that are micro inputs for macro outputs because that's efficient. And we want to be efficient in our use of our inner resources too.
And what would you say about belief? Because, that takes, some people watching, maybe, I don't know if my belief, my false beliefs, my, trauma beliefs, all those beliefs that are carrying that baggage of our mental constructs, can we actually open up our minds to accept that it's a micro input to a macro change?
I think the way to do imagery is always to experiment with it. And
Mm-hmm.
at the moment of experimentation, you're an open system and you're not making any conclusions about what's going to happen. So you're not going to, so suspend, if you happen to be a skeptic, suspend your judgment. That's
Mm-hmm.
one way to handle it. And the other way is to understand that when you do an imaginal process, it's in this moment. And even though you might have an intention to heal, what you're doing is healing yourself in this moment. And you're opening up a pathway to the future to have a different outcome. But it's an aim. So we never talk about goals in imagery. We always talk about aims. We're
Right.
aiming in a direction because if you aim for something, you can adjust things as they come along. And a goal is much more time oriented, and we want to be out of time. We don't want to have a goal that we have to get here by an X amount of time. That puts tremendous amount of pressure talking about getting out of the no time zone. The way we've constructed our modern life is that we have to have goals. And not only do we have goals, set goals that have to be measured, but we also have to do it in a way that when we're setting this, when we're setting goals, we're always living in time. And that creates a huge belief about we're always running out of time.
Mm-hmm.
And that's an incredible pressure that most of us in modern society are living. I don't have enough time to do this. I don't have enough time to do that, right? So we want to do that. And the other thing is that you can think of imagery as planting in a new belief in yourself, right? So let's see if that plant can take root in you or whether you have so many weeds that it can't possibly live in you, right? So you want to suspend those leaves and just plant the seeds and see what happens in an open experimental way. That's how I would describe it for myself.
Well, there's two questions in the chat. First of all, is there a difference between dream and imagery and what? And then explaining further more about the difference between aims and goals.
Okay, so let's do the aims and the goals. So goals, the way I use the word goal is that it's something that would have to happen in the future. An aim is a direction. You take aim at something and it happens or it doesn't happen. And so it's present. You're in the present moment. If you think about like when you take a bow and arrow, you have an aim. You want to hit the target. You might hit the target, you might not, right? You might decide to aim for something different. A goal is, in the way that I'm using the word, is it's a set, something must happen. And if it doesn't happen, it puts you into a state of emergency. If you're in an aim, if you're in an open system where it can be an aim and the aim can shift, you're much more relaxed. If you're already goal centered, you're sort of living out in the future and then backtracking to the present moment. Maybe that's the way to think about it. I hadn't thought about it that way. An
Mm-hmm.
aim, you're here and it will unfold. The future will come to you. In a
Mm-hmm.
goal, you have to backtrack into the moment again.
Right. I mean, I've used aims so much with clients versus goals because of what Jerry taught me about aim.
Well, maybe he said it to you in a different way. So how do you remember it so we
Well,
can?
I remember that it was, that particular stance that it gives you more space to discover if you just focus on an aim to allow the universe to provide more information on your aim. So rather than the goal is already set and you want that from A to B, it opens up the possibilities. And again, it's bringing in the quantum, the possibilities for you to grow with each time you aim towards something that you want. So I know somebody asked about dreams and waking dreams.
Yeah, that's
Oh, we have 5 minutes. Oh, so let's talk a little bit about imagery in dreams, because I have to say it was so powerful what happened with my own dream state and the veil dropping as I studied with Jerry, and my waking dream state and all the thoughts I thought and how they interrelated into my actual dreams. And it all started coming together as a flow.
That's beautiful. So dreams are, when we dream, we're really, there's three types of images that we can think of, or four, right? We have imaginal experiences in mental imagery while we're awake. Then when we sleep, we go into a deeper imaginal realm of dreams where we're accessing information not only from the depth of self, but also from these higher realms in a much more, it's the deepest way to access information in this system. And we have a face, which is also an image, and that is reflecting our inside. So the idea was a hermetic idea that the inside and the outside are reflecting each other. And then the world around us also reflecting us, right? We have violence inside, we have violence outside. And so we learn how to read the messages from the outside world as reflections of us and what's going on in us. And so, because in this world, nothing happens by chance, right? Things don't happen by chance. It's opposite of the Western scientific model, where there's chance all the time. In spiritual life, there is no chance. So, so there's a process in this work called waking dream therapy. And I think I'm not exactly sure if that's what you're referring to,
Yes.
but you take a dream and you take the most significant part of the dream. Usually it has a vertical axis, but it doesn't always have to have one. And you go back in a waking state into the dream to unfold the dream. And it has very transformative qualities, and it's very self-directed. There's a guide, and the guide lets you go where you go and keeps you safe. Which is a little different than the mental imagery scripted exercises that we do.
Mm-hmm. Yes. I have a personal experience with that with Jerry that I've always regretted. And I'm going to tell you online what it was. But I had an imagery, or first I had a dream that I was in Paris under the Eiffel Tower, and I got in an elevator, but it was all brown paper around it, so I couldn't see up as the elevator ascended. And so Jerry loved that. He's like, okay, well, go back into your dream, and now what happens? And so he said, take the paper off.
Right.
And see what happens. And so what happened is, as I took the paper off, I ascended up the Eiffel Tower to the top. But the Eiffel Tower became like a big mechanical like person and started walking on the planet. Like it took these big steps, and one of the steps went to Africa, the next continent. And it was like this huge, and I was in it, like this transformer thing. And I remember he said, now do you want to leave the tower? He was in a personal session with me. And I thought for a while, I was thinking, if I leave the planet, I'm not going to feel grounded in Earth anymore, because it was something that was happening in my consciousness with, I don't want to leave the planet. I'm here to help the planet and support it. And I said, no, I don't want to leave the planet. And now I regret that I didn't with him. He would have guided me into the cosmos.
I think you've gotten there anyhow, because you did your imagery with all of us where you've been guided into the cosmos, and you've done so much other work that I think it's okay to let it go. And also,
Thanks, Rachel.
it was true. You weren't ready to do it. And maybe, that was the appropriate answer at that moment.
I agree.
Right?
I agree. Thank you. Jerry's talking through you. I remember Jerry's face didn't respond to, anything. It was all about what I wanted to do with my decision. He was there to support me. But I remember afterward, I walked out of the office. Why didn't I just go up there and have the faith to do it? But fear came in. Somehow fear took control. But Rachel, you are a delight. And I have to say, you have picked up the shield of this work on the planet in such an elegant and lovely way as a woman expressing your interpretation of what your husband did for, I don't know how many years Jerry was doing this kind of work, 30?
I was with him for 30 years and he had been doing it for at least almost 20 before that. Spent 11
Wow.
years doing this work.
And I can't just tell the audience enough of what an extraordinary human being as he walked on the planet Jerry was. He was extraordinary.
And fun.
Yeah, very fun, very playful, very mischievous, all the things that you want to be around, this mind of extraordinaire. So we are going to join the after chat. I'm got to close. We're a minute over. Thank you for joining the week.
Thank you so much.
Rachel, you're a delight. Everybody enjoys your exercise. We're going to do a little after chat work on. I don't know what's going to happen next week. Jim didn't give me some privy. Usually he boots up the next week. So I guess it's going to be a discovery for everybody, just like as you are in an imagery exercise. So much love to everybody. This week has been extraordinary for me. I've had such great conversations, and I look forward to another week with you. You're an amazing community. So happy to be here. I hope you,
Great.
Yeah, you take care, and let's do a little after chat with Rachel, everybody. Hope you can join. Much love.